the Swiss Alps. A wall of rock and ice across most of a country. Peaks where the air runs thin. Winters that seal the passes and hold them shut for half the year. A cold that kills anything not built for it. So how does a bird go to sleep on a branch in 30 below and still be alive in the morning? How does a goat cross a cliff face where one misjudged step is a 1,000-foot fall, and do it while carrying a newborn? How does a fox hunt prey it cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot reach, and still go to bed fed? How do you fight a rival to the death, raise young on a ledge no predator can reach, and cross a mountain range that is actively trying to kill you? Above the tree line, under the snow, on cliffs no human will ever stand on, every animal up here has an answer, and one of them went extinct here. It came back on its own, and it is already hunting. The Alps act as a hard weather divide between northern and southern Europe. Every species here exists within margins so fine that a shift of a few hundred feet of altitude can mean the difference between a population that thrives and one that quietly disappears. They don't just cover 60% of Switzerland, they are Switzerland. Temperatures here swing from 80 degrees Fahrenheit on a valley floor in July to 30 below zero at the peaks in January. Everything that lives at high altitude in the Alps is there because it solved a problem that killed everything else. Some of the flowering plants found on Alpine ridges take over a decade to produce their first bloom. And in between, an entire world of animals, each carrying a different answer to the same question. How do you survive a place that is trying to kill you every single day? And yet the Ibex moves across the cliff face, the way a person walks across a kitchen floor, every step placed with a confidence that looks almost lazy. Its greatest strength is the one you would never guess by looking at it. Not the horns, but their hooves. The two toes on each hoof operate independently, spreading wide or pinching together to wedge into a crack no wider than a coin. They climb it to lick mineral salts, but it's not so easy to get there when you're a mature male carrying up to 260 pounds, plus horns that can reach 3 feet long. So males take longer routes, lower angles, paths where muscle matters more than precision. The females and kids go where physics says they shouldn't. The Ibex is built for cold. On warm days, it overheats at altitudes where most animals are still comfortable because it cannot sweat efficiently. Its only option is to climb higher to where the air is cooler. But there is a ceiling. Above 13,000 feet, there is no grass. They will find only rock and ice. But luckily they track the melt with the precision of a farmer following a forecast. This helps them maintain the 15 to 20 pounds of vegetation per day. In spring that means alpine grasses, herbs and moss, food that appears in narrow windows as the snow line retreats. Without them, the highest reaches of the Alps would fall apart, because every meadow they graze, every predator they feed, and every slope they fertilise depends on this one animal continuing to do what it does best. Other activity they are really waiting for is happening when autumn arrives and the rut begins. The males that spent summer in bachelor herds seek out the females, and each other. Two males face off on a slope, where one wrong step could mean a fall. The strongest males earn harems of a dozen or more females, while the rest retreat and wait for another year. Every clash is a calculation. How much strength to spend, how much to hold back, how far to push before the cost becomes too high. But here is the thing most people miss about Ibex combat. It almost never happens. Males establish rank before the rut through a ritualised system of horn displays, body posture, and parallel walking. A dominant male may fight only 5 times across an entire 3-week rut. Serious injuries are rare because this is an animal that cannot afford a broken leg at 10,000 feet in winter. Younger males spar at the margins, lighter contact, rehearsing for a fight that is still years away. They might look mighty now, but a newborn weighs about 8 pounds. The baby Ibex makes sure to stay close to its mother, learning everything by imitation. The kid either keeps up or it does not. Unlike some species where the group absorbs orphans, young Ibex are dependent on a single relationship for warmth, protection, and feeding location. Without that one animal, the knowledge of where to go and what to do simply doesn't transfer. They practice balance the way other animals practice running, constantly, clumsily at first, then with growing confidence. Within the first year, male Ibex drift toward all male groups, while females stay close to the maternal herd. The social split happens gradually, almost invisibly, but by the time a young male is 2 years old, He is living a fundamentally different life than his sisters. Mothers choose birthing sites on inaccessible ledges, specifically because predators cannot reach them easily. The cliff is meant to protect them from most predators, but not from the one that hunts from the sky. The golden eagle is the apex predator of the open sky above the Alps, and everything beneath it knows when it is there. It carries 2 focal points in each eye instead of 1, giving it a built-in telephoto lens. From a perch several hundred feet above a meadow, its vision can resolve a marmot at more than half a mile. It does not need to see its prey directly. It reads behaviour. When Ibex mothers cluster tight and track the sky with their heads, the eagle knows their young are nearby. The mountain is a map it has memorised from above, and every movement on it tells a story. The golden eagle's greatest weapon is not its talons, though they exert roughly 100 pounds of crushing force. It is patience. It will soar for an hour, burning almost no energy, circling on thermals, waiting for the geometry to shift in its favour. It does not attack until one animal separates from the group, even by a few feet. Its hunting success rate in the Alps sits around 1 in 5, but the eagle has time, and the mountain always offers another opportunity. Sooner or later, a kid wanders too far from the group, a marmot lingers too long in the open, and the geometry is just right. During courtship, the male does one of the most precise aerial displays in the animal world, picking up a rock or a stick in mid-flight, climbs to altitude, drops it, then diving after it and catch it before it hits the ground. He repeats this 3 or more times. If the female is impressed, she does the same. These birds of prey are not the only predator reading this mountain, and the ibex is not the only prey trying to survive it. Faster, more nervous, the chamois is built for an entirely different kind of escape. When a chamois spots a predator, it fires a sharp whistle through elongated nostrils while stamping a front hoof, a sound that sends every animal within earshot into a sprint. When a herd is feeding, 1 or more animals stand apart, scanning the ridgeline, the tree line, and the sky. At the first sign of a predator, the lookout gives the sharp whistle, and the entire herd bolts in seconds. They do not deliberate, they run, and the sprint is something to see, nearly 30 miles per hour on a slope that would send a human tumbling. And it can change direction mid-stride without losing pace. Their fighting tells you everything about how they differ from ibex. A chamois skull is thin and fragile. Head-on collision would crack it, so rutting males don't clash, they chase. After the pursuit and a successful rutting season, kids naturally appear. A chamois kid stands within minutes of birth and runs within hours. It has to, because the lynx is already in the forest below and the eagle is already circling above. The herd moves as one. When the mothers climb, the cubs climb. When the lookout whistles, the cubs run before they even understand what they are running from. It is survival by instruction. Each day on the mountain teaching the young chamois something its body will remember long after it stops being small enough for an eagle to carry. Chamois mothers are one of the most aggressive defensive animals in the Alps relative to their size, ferociously protecting their kid. A mother will position herself between her kid and a predator and hold that ground. She will not flee first. She leaves last, if at all. For them, spring is the most dangerous season. But spring is on borrowed time, and when the warmth ends, the rules of this mountain change completely. By October, the first snowfall seals the passes above 8,000 feet. By December, the average temperature drops below freezing and stays there for 175 consecutive days. In deep winter, the Alps go almost completely silent. The birds are gone, the insects are gone, and the wind moves across a landscape with almost nothing left to disturb. At high altitude, the sun reflects off snow with enough intensity to cause snow blindness. The same UV damage as staring at an eclipse, just slower and less obvious until it's too late. Here the sky and ground merge into a single featureless white plain, with no horizon, a phenomenon called a whiteout. Experienced mountaineers have walked off cliffs in these whiteout conditions because their ability to read the landscape just seemed to be vanished. Every animal that remains here is now operating on a deficit, burning more than it takes in, spending reserves it built during a summer that already feels like another lifetime. Everything alive here has a winter strategy. The only question is which strategy keeps you alive until next spring. And then there is the red fox, the one animal on this mountain that does not seem to care what season it is. It does not need a cliff, a forest, or a colony. The fox is an expert at adjusting, but its weakness is that it's small enough to be prey itself. Golden eagles take foxes, and so will a lynx if the opportunity presents. They grow a winter coat so dense that gives them the possibility to sleep exposed on open snowfields. The only thing they need to do is curl tight and wrap their thick tail over their nose to make sure they cover the one part of the body most vulnerable to heat loss. In the coldest months, instead of conserving themselves, they choose to mate. the mountain fills with the calls of foxes locating each other across snow-covered territories. And the cubs born from those winter encounters will arrive in spring, timed precisely to match the return of prey. While the ibex starves and the marmot sleeps, the fox is out working the snowfields, listening. Its hearing is so precise, it can detect a vole tunnelling beneath 2 feet of snow from 25 feet away. When it locks onto the sound, it tilts its head, freezes, and then launches itself into the air, diving nose first through the snowpack. It either comes up with a vole in its teeth or shakes the snow from its face and starts listening again. Foxes jumping northeast succeeded 73% of the time. Any other direction, 18%. Nearly 600 jumps across 84 foxes confirm the pattern, held regardless of season, weather, or time of day. The leading theory is that foxes use Earth's magnetic field to calculate distance to prey before they leave the ground, making it the first animal known to use magnetism as a hunting strategy. This sneaky animal hunts by finding what is hidden, but some things on this mountain have made themselves nearly impossible to find. The rock Ptarmigan changes its entire plumage 3 times a year, more than almost any other bird on Earth. Each transition takes roughly a month, the feathers replacing themselves in a wave that tracks the snow line with uncanny precision. It feeds on whatever the wind exposes, frozen buds, seeds, scraps of vegetation poking through the ice. When a storm hits, it burrows into the snow itself, letting the drift close over it like a blanket. In deep winter, Ptarmigan form tight flocks, behaviour they largely abandon in summer. The flock is not social in any complex sense. It's just that more bodies in a snow roost means more shared warmth, and on the coldest nights, the difference between roosting alone and roosting together can be the difference between surviving until morning and not. The birds communicate almost entirely in guttural, low-frequency calls that carry poorly over distance, the opposite of what most birds do. On an open ridge in winter, a loud, high call is a signal to every predator within range, and they evolved to be heard by the bird next to it, and nothing else. Against a snowfield, a ptarmigan sitting still is almost impossible to see. It becomes a bump of snow with a pulse. The moment it walks or takes flight, the camouflage breaks. A golden eagle scanning a white slope sees nothing until the ptarmigan moves. And then it sees everything. Its survival depends on a simple bet, that staying still and invisible will outlast the patience of whatever is looking for it, and most of the time, it wins that bet. The ibex has no use for camouflage. Even in the coldest months, the ibex does not abandon the cliffs entirely. They traverse steep rock faces above the snowline, standing on narrow ledges with the kind of stillness that looks like patience, but is really just a well-calculated conservation. Males form their own groups on the highest, most exposed terrain, burning reserves they built through summer, while the females stay lower with their young ones, on more sheltered slopes, ensuring their kids' survival to spring. And at the worst possible moment the mountain offers, the rut is happening. All the males throw most of their hard-built mass away, chasing females across frozen terrain, fighting rival males on icy ridges, and going days without feeding. The animals that survive the rut and still make it through the rest of winter are the strongest individuals on the mountain. But first, the Ibex enters a state of controlled metabolic shutdown, cutting energy expenditure to less than half its summer level. They move less and they eat less, choosing to climb to south-facing slopes, where the sun softens the snow enough to expose a few mouthfuls of frozen grass. Chamois take the opposite approach. They face winter with the same alert tension they carry in every other season. But now there is less room for error. Their biggest threat is not starvation or cold, it is an avalanche. They feed on the same steep, wind-loaded slopes that accumulate the most unstable snowpack. A single slide can bury an entire group, and a chamois that survives the slide may not survive what comes after. The energy cost of digging out of compacted debris in a body that has already been shrinking its own internal organs for months to save fuel. There is a scent gland behind each horn that becomes more active in winter, and they use it to mark territory and communicate reproductive status during the rut. On a frozen ridge with no vegetation to scent mark, they just use the rock itself to make sure the chemical map of the mountain is made. When feeding, they scan constantly, checking the ridgeline above, the forest edge below, the open slopes where a predator could close distance before the herd reacts. Even eating is interrupted by these pauses, the chamois lifting its head mid-bite to look and listen before returning to the thin ration the winter allows. Not every animal fights the winter head-on. Some have found quieter ways to outlast the cold. In the frozen forests, tits, great tits, blue tits, crested tits are among the smallest warm-blooded creatures to stay active through an alpine winter. They flit between branches with restless energy, searching for seeds, insects, and scraps of dried vegetation in the barks. Their speed is their survival secret. A tit burns through its body weight in energy so quickly that a single day without food can be fatal. To survive the night, it lowers its body temperature from 108 degrees to roughly 95, a controlled drop that cuts heat loss but walks a razor edge. By morning it has lost 10% of its body weight, and it has roughly 2 hours of daylight to replace what the night cost, or the next night will be its last. They form mixed species flocks in winter, so they can all benefit from the alertness of every other, especially when predators are around. And yet dominance within a tit flock determines who eats first and who gets the best roost site. And in these cold times, that hierarchy has direct survival consequences. Moving through the same frozen canopy, red squirrels follow a different strategy. Their survival depends not on constant foraging, but on planning. Throughout autumn, they bury nuts and seeds in caches scattered across the forest floor. In winter, they dig them up, relocating their stores by memory and smell, even through a foot of snow. They have been documented making decisions about cache placement based on soil drainage, preferring slightly elevated, well-drained ground that is less likely to waterlog and rot the food stored in it. We are watching how an animal with a brain the size of a walnut is, in effect, doing rudimentary soil assessment before deciding where to put its winter food supply. As active as they look, they do take breaks, but the squirrels are acutely sensitive to disturbance during winter sleep periods. A predator moving through the canopy, a branch falling, or an unfamiliar sound. Any of these can rouse the squirrel from its energy-conserving rest and force it to burn reserves it cannot afford to lose. These small forest animals are easy to overlook, but they are proof that survival in the Alps is not only about size and strength. Sometimes it is about being fast enough, or prepared enough, to simply keep going when everything larger has either left or shut down. Below the frozen forest, the Alpine rivers still carry water through the valleys. The thing is that they freeze from the edges, inward. The banks lock up first, building ice shelves over fast-moving water that stays liquid beneath. The water continues running under its own frozen ceiling, being invisible from the surface, but if you stand close enough, you can definitely hear it. These rivers are the circulatory system of the Alps. They carry oxygen and temperature cues that regulate life at every altitude below the peaks. Above this all, the river is also a highway. When snow is too deep to cross on open ground, deer and chamois follow riverbeds downstream. The ice above is thick enough to bear their weight, avoiding the valley corridors that wolves and lynx know by memory. Where the rivers go, the mountain's largest animals follow, the kind that comes in herds. Deers begin moving downward into the lower valleys where food is easier to find. They are the largest herbivores to migrate through the Alps each winter, and their movement down the mountain reshapes the valley ecosystem entirely. Where they graze, the snow packs down, and where they choose to bed, the ground warms. Migration distances average about 7.5 miles. That is not far, but 7 miles of altitude change can mean the difference between chest-deep snow and bare ground. Their trails become corridors for smaller animals, and their presence draws attention from all the corners. The only time they are stopping is to finding enough food to eat. They move through snow-covered fields and forest clearings, digging through the frozen surface with their hooves to reach whatever grass and vegetation lies beneath. Each scrape is a small investment of energy that may or may not pay off. A deer that moves too much in winter spends more energy than it takes in. A deer that moves too little may not find food at all. The balance is narrow, and every day on the frozen valley floor is a negotiation between effort and return. When snow buries the ground vegetation, deer switch to bark. They strip it from young trees in long vertical gouges, targeting the thin layer of living tissue just beneath the surface. It is low in nutrition and high in compounds the body struggles to process, but it is available when nothing else is. Between feeding bouts they stand or lie motionless, lowering their heart rates, letting their core temperature drift downward. For most of winter, the deer are still and moving as little as possible, standing in forest clearings or feeding in slow, careful steps across the snow. But survival in the Alps depends on one ability that no amount of stillness can replace. At the first sign of danger, the herd explodes into motion. The energy cost of a single sprint across deep snow equals an entire day's foraged food. And then just as quickly, they stop, regrouping, scanning, breathing hard, waiting to see if the threat follows. A wolf does not need to catch a deer, it only needs to make it run. By late winter, the line between an animal that survived and one that didn't can be measured in the number of times it ran from nothing. But during extreme winters, deer are not the only ones making their way down into the valleys. Wolves follow. The wolf is the only true pack hunter in the Alps. Where the lynx stalks alone and the eagle hunts from a single perch, wolves operate as a unit. They travel together through the forest, reading the snow for tracks and scent, circling wide around a herd before tightening the approach. Wolves maintain a steady pace that gradually exhausts prey that relies on short bursts of speed. The deer's defense is the herd itself, staying together, staying alert, exploding into motion at the first sign of danger. A healthy adult deer in a tight group is almost untouchable. but wolves are patient, and they are very good at finding the one animal that is not quite as fast, not quite as strong, not quite as alert as the rest. Patience is sometimes not that productive, because hunting success on hoofed prey runs between 3 and 14%. They actually fail far more often than they succeed, but failure costs a wolf almost nothing. It just keeps walking. Wolves in the Alps were hunted to regional extinction by the early 20th century and began returning naturally from Italy in the 1990s. They crossed the Alps on their own, recolonised territory their ancestors had lost, and reinserted themselves into an ecosystem that had reorganised entirely around their absence. And ever since, they are always after the prey. But as much as wolves love chasing deer, something changes when the seasons turn, because in rutting season, the deer turn on each other. And for approximately 3 weeks, no predator on the mountain is as dangerous to a stag as another stag. Males that were gaunt and cautious through the cold now carry a different kind of energy. Their antlers have reached full size, testosterone floods their systems, and the rut begins. A stag barely eats during this period. He does not sleep more than minutes at a time. A dominant male roars up to 500 times per hour. Before dawn and after dusk, the rate doubles. He is not calling to females. He is measuring the distance between himself and every rival within earshot. When two matched stags meet, they parallel walk first, assessing size, stride, the mass of bone on each other's head. If neither backs down, they lower and lock. They clash antlers with enough force to carry across the valley walls, pushing, twisting, locking horns in contests that can last for minutes. The weaker animal eventually breaks away, and the winner claims the herd. The rut is driven by a simple equation. The strongest males pass on their genes. That's exactly why females are not passive. They are selective. A female will move away from a pursuing male, force him to prove his endurance across difficult terrain, and sometimes lead two rivals into proximity to trigger a direct confrontation. As spring spreads through the valleys and up the slopes, the forest is waking too. And in the canopy, a small bird is already at work on something that will outlast them all. The spotted nutcracker feeds almost exclusively on the seeds of the Swiss stone pine. The pine seeds are heavy, with only a vestigial wing too small to catch the wind. Without help, they fall straight down, directly beneath the parent tree, where they compete with their own canopy and almost never survive. The nutcracker solves this issue cracking open cones and carrying the nuts across the forest to bury them in the soil. It can relocate most of these caches months later, even under a foot of snow, navigating to within inches of a spot it visited once in autumn. But not all of them. The forgotten seeds germinate and grow into pine trees, becoming forest over decades. It is, without knowing it, one of the most effective tree planters in the Alps. The stone pine forests that stabilise mountain slopes, shelter wildlife, and hold the soil together exist in large part because a small bird forgot where it buried its lunch. And it is in these forests, and on the cliffs above them, that one of the Alps' most misunderstood animals has returned. The bearded vulture feeds on bones other scavengers cannot eat, being very pleased that he found a meal no one else wanted. "70 to 90% of its diet is bone. It swallows pieces up to a foot long, dissolving them in stomach acid with a pH near 1, strong enough to corrode metal. Bones too large to swallow get carried to altitude and dropped onto flat rock from 150 feet up. Young vultures take up to 7 years to master the technique. In the wild, they deliberately bathe in mineral springs heavy with iron oxide, staining their naturally white feathers a strong rust orange. Some believe it signals dominance. Older, stronger birds tend to be a deeper hue. Captive birds, denied access to iron-heavy water, stay white their entire lives. The timing of their breeding is unlike any other raptor in Europe. They nest in the winter, and after 55 days, chicks hatch, emerging in late February. By the time they fledge 4 months later, it is June, and the spring thaw has exposed every carcass winter buried. Avalanche killed chamois, ibex that starved on the wrong slope, marmots that did not survive hibernation. The chicks' first months of independence coincide with the most abundant scavenging season of the year. If 2 eggs hatch, only 1 chick survives. The older sibling always kills the younger, and the parents do not intervene. And the young one learns to not compete with other scavengers for flesh. It lets the ravens, the foxes, and the crows take what they want, and when they are finished and gone, the vulture walks in on its feet and begins the work that only it can do, always making sure that nothing is wasted. Below the tree line, another predator works in the opposite direction. It does not wait for death, it delivers it in silence. The Eurasian lynx is the ghost of the Swiss forest. It moves on paws 3 times the size of a house cat's, and it makes almost no sound. Its coat, dense and patterned, breaks its outline against the dappled forest floor. You could walk past a lynx at 50 feet and never know it. By the time its prey registers movement, the gap between them is less than 60 feet. It can bring down a chamois that outmatches its own size by a factor of 2, and has been documented killing adult deer weighing over 300 pounds. They leave almost no behavioural signature in the landscape. No howling, no visible territorial marking, no daytime movement. The only reliable evidence of its presence is in winter, leaving tracks in fresh snow and the remains of kills. As a lonely hunter, it doesn't run prey down. It stalks to within a few body lengths and closes the distance in a single explosive burst. If the ambush fails, the lynx stops, and it will not pursue a chase across open ground. It returns to cover and waits because against alert prey in open terrain, it is nearly helpless. What makes this feline irreplaceable is not merely what it eats, but what its presence prevents. It takes 50 to 60 ungulates a year, primarily the weak, the old, the sick. This selective pressure keeps herds healthy, reduces disease transmission, and prevents the overgrazing that would otherwise slow the regeneration of alpine forests. Over generations, the Swiss Alpine lynx have shifted their primary prey from roe deer to chamois, adapting to a mountain their Carpathian ancestors never knew. Young chamois take their first steps still unsteady, learning the ground. They are small enough to bring down and slow enough to catch, and the lynx knows this. When one young chamois wanders a few steps too far from the group, the predator does what it was built to do. After each kill, it drags the carcass under cover and returns each evening for 2 to 4 days of feeding. Spring is the season of opportunity for most of the predators here. For a marmot, spring starts with a resurrection, opening its eyes for the first time in 6 months. To find it, you have to listen, because long before you see a marmot, you hear one. A single piercing whistle, sharp enough to carry half a mile across an alpine meadow, and within seconds the entire colony that was basking in the sun has vanished underground. These burrows are engineering projects, passed down and expanded across generations, with some in continuous use for decades. It survives not through individual toughness, but through cooperation. Lookouts rotate and communication with a sophistication that surprises scientists. Different whistle patterns signal different threats. A short, repeated burst means danger from the sky. A longer, sustained call means something is approaching on the ground. The colony responds accordingly before any individual has even seen what triggered the alarm. The whistle system works, but not every time. A marmot caught 20 feet from its burrow, on the wrong side of a rock, with an eagle already coming, has no defence. It cannot outrun the dive and it cannot fight back. The safest plan is to be closer to the hole than the eagle is to it. The meadows the marmot depends on are the same ones the ibex maintains through grazing. Without the ibex, the grass grows tall, then gives way to scrub. The burrows become harder to dig, and the whistles carry less far. This is only one little detail that makes you understand the basics of balance. The marmot has roughly 5 months to double its body mass on a diet of alpine grasses, herbs, flowers, and the occasional insect. Every day of summer is a deposit into a fat reserve that must last through the next winter. There is no second chance and no alternative strategy. The marmots feed with a kind of steady urgency, moving between patches of vegetation, sitting upright to chew, then dropping back down to pull up more. They eat through the morning, rest through the midday warmth, and eat again through the afternoon. It looks like a lot of time and work on the surface, but in reality, they spend 90% of their life underground. Every spring, it crawls from a sealed chamber into a world that looks nothing like the one it left, and begins counting the days until it has to go back. The entire summer is, in a sense, one long meal, trying to make out 6 months of feeding to pay for 6 months of sleep. The Alpine marmot is the largest mammal on Earth that undergoes true hibernation, and it can live this cycle for up to 18 years. But the clock that governs every birth, every hunt, and every hibernation is the one measured in snowfall and sunlight. Between the last snow melt, the first hard freeze, everything alive here must eat enough, grow enough, store enough to survive 6 months of cold that permits no margin and no second chance. None of these animals exist alone. Every chase, every birth, and every move is an arrangement that has been running longer than any of them can remember. Take one away and the others feel it. Not immediately, but eventually, and by then it is usually too late. These are the Swiss Alps, a land of untamed beauty and wildlife at every turn. Now, if you don't want to miss the most extraordinary wildlife of Siberia, check out this video.